Hi, this is Pim from Smart Diabetics Academy. In this video I will go over what diabetes tests you can do and what they will tell you. So in this video I want to stick to the three most common blood glucose tests that are used for diagnosing diabetes. There are more time-consuming tests that you can do that will be able to detect insulin resistance in the earlier stages, etc. And I have covered these in other videos on this channel. So if you're interested in those, you can just go back and have a look at those videos, craft test among others, etc. But I'm not going to go into those in this video because they're not normally used. And if you want to do such a test, read up on it, try to find a specialist that is specializing and is a little bit unconventional that will do these tests for you if that's something that you want to do. So, since diabetes is literally a condition of impaired function of glucose metabolism, what that leads to is that you will have elevated blood sugar. So that is a symptom of diabetes. So that's what we're testing for. That's the only way that we can actually detect diabetes. Well, I say that, but that's the easiest way to detect diabetes. So that's what they're using, and those are the tests that we're going to focus on today. So if you're already diagnosed with diabetes, you've probably been through at least one of these tests before, and if not more. And the most common one is the fasting plasma glucose test that you can do, and that's usually included in just when people go in for normal health check. They usually do that just to check that everything's all right, because sometimes they can detect, that something's going on, and they will tell you that you're pre-diabetic and you need to change your diet and your lifestyle, etc. Otherwise you're gonna get diabetes. So that's one of the most common ones. So this is a test that is done after an overnight fast. So usually they will tell you that you have to come into the doctor's office at 10 a.m. tomorrow, whatever, and please don't eat for the last 12 hours. So after you had dinner, don't eat anything in the evening, etc. And what I will show is how your baseline of blood glucose baseline, literally what it looks like, how much your blood glucose is elevated, if at all. So if it's normal, it will be in the normal range, and they will just tell you. But when you have diabetes, a lot of the time it can either take a very, very long time for the blood glucose to go down after you've eaten, and if you're on a very high carbohydrate diet, it can take more than 12 hours because you're just abusing the system so much, which isn't working very well. Or in other cases, a lot of diabetics, they have an elevated baseline, so the blood glucose level never really goes down to normal. It's always a little bit elevated, and that's what we can detect with this test. So it's really good at doing that, obviously, but the downside with this test is that it will not show any early stages of insulin resistance or even intermediate stages of insulin resistance. It will only show you when it's pretty far gone already, when your blood glucose is elevated that long after you have been eating. So this is not normal, okay? So if you have a look here, so diagnosis of diabetes is usually made after two separate blood tests that both of them have been showing that something is out of order. And if your blood glucose is higher than 126 milligrams per deciliter, or if you're in Europe, certain parts of Europe, that would be more than 7 millimoles per liter. Or you can use a combination with any of the other tests that I'm going to go through as well. So if it's between 70 and 100 milligrams per deciliter, you are diagnosed as, or not diagnosed, you consider to not have diabetes. If it's between 100 and 126, they will tell you that you're pre-diabetic and ask you to do something about your diet and lifestyle to avoid getting diabetic. In my opinion, there is not much difference between being pre-diabetic and diabetic. It's just how severe it is already. So whether you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, you should actually take action straight away and take them both as seriously as one another. So the second test that I want to talk about that you might come across is something called the oral glucose tolerance test, or OGTT. So this test is also performed after an overnight fast, and that test will show you more how you react to sugars that you're consuming. So before you start the test, what it will do is that it will take a blood sample from you to measure your blood glucose to see what it is when you fasted. So that's the same as the fasting plasma glucose. And then you have to drink a drink that they will give you, which contains 75 grams of sugar, and then you have to wait for 2 hours. So this is quite time consuming as well. And after 2 hours, what they will do is that they will measure your blood glucose again, and if your blood glucose level is above 200 milligrams per deciliter, or 11.1 millimoles per liter if you like, you will be diagnosed with diabetes, because this will be considered to be an insufficient response to the consumption of glucose. If it's below 140 milligrams per deciliter, or 7.8 millimoles per liter, you consider to not have diabetes. And then you have the middle ground, which is 140 to 199, or 7.8 to 11.1, which indicates that you are pre-diabetic. But as I said before, in my opinion, this is just a less severe form of diabetes, and you still have diabetes. Right, so the third one is a test that you probably heard about, which is called HbA1c, and this is measuring how much sugar there is bound to the hemoglobin in your red blood cells. And by measuring this, what you can see is that you get an idea of the average blood sugar that what it has been over the last 4 months, because that's how long red blood cells live. I should have a glass of water here, really. So if you have an HbA1c over 6.5%, or 48 millimoles per mole, you will be diagnosed with diabetes, because they will make a conclusion that your blood sugar has been this high on average for this period of time, which is abnormal, and that's the cutoff for diabetes. And if you have an HbA1c which is between 5.7 and 6.5, you will be diagnosed as pre-diabetic again, and you will be considered at the risk of developing diabetes in the future. And if it's less than 5.7, you're considered to be healthy, right? Now, if the limit is 5.7%, but I would like you think about what this actually means, because this is the upper limit. So if your HbA1c is over 5, in my opinion, I would like you to consider to change your diet immediately, because something is pushing this number up, and if you're eating too many carbohydrates, that's probably why. So in my opinion, anything higher than 5 is definitely higher than it should be, even if it's not really considered being dangerous according to the guidelines. It doesn't mean that you're sick yet, so that's the good news, but it means that you have some glycation going on in your body. And when that happens, let's say it happens in the walls of your blood vessels. So all sorts of things can happen there. When you get the glycation in the blood vessel walls, that means that you easier get tears in the structure in those blood vessels. And when you do that, you are getting inflammation and the repair process, and you can get plaques and eventually develop heart disease, because they can dislodge and they can give you a stroke or a heart attack or whatever. So this is why diabetes is so closely related to heart disease, because of the glycation of the inner wall. So for anyone who wants to be healthy, you need to keep your glycation level down as much as possible. So that's why I think that 5 is probably still too high. And you don't want these atherosclerotic plaque everywhere in your blood vessels. That's obviously not very good for you, and that's why your risk of heart disease, if you have diabetes, is going up quite severely. So it's always a good thing to try to get your HbA1c down to between 3.5 and 5, something like that, preferably closer to 4 than 5 if that is possible. So just a little quick word on pre-diabetes. I did say this before, but when you are diagnosed with pre-diabetes, what that is telling you is just that you already have pretty bad insulin resistance. You have enough insulin resistance for them to detect it, and you're definitely on your way to diabetes. And if you go back one step more, pre-diabetes, if you like, that's another stage of insulin resistance which we cannot detect with any of the tests that we have at the doctor's office. So there is a process from having normal levels or being insulin sensitive to being somewhat insulin resistant to being more and more and more, and along that line in the middle, or the last 75% or 25%, sorry, that's kind of where they can detect it with these methods. So before you actually get that diagnosis, you're already pretty far gone. And most people don't know this, and the doctors don't really think about what is happening before, because they just given a range of numbers and a definition for what those numbers mean. And they don't need to think about what is happening in your body in the stages leading up to that. So it's already quite serious. And in my opinion, you already have diabetes at this stage, but I don't decide the diagnostic cutoffs or the values. So you're gonna be told that it's not a huge problem, but you need to do something about it. But in my opinion, it is a huge problem, and the earlier that you can change your diet, the better. And the quicker it's going to be for you to reverse your diabetes as well, because the longer you had this condition, the more you're obviously going to have made some damage to your body, and the more insulin resistant you are, and the more you have to work to get back to baseline. So if you're diagnosed as a pre-diabetic, please do go and treat it as if you already had been diagnosed with diabetes. So it's no different, it's just a little bit less severe. And if you need more help and tips on how to do that, you can just join my Facebook group, where you can ask me any questions that you like, and I will get back to you personally. And all you have to do is, I'm going to post it, the link is posted down in the description, but you go to smartdiabeticsacademy.com/Facebook and you will get there. And if you like this video, obviously please do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the little bell icon so that you will get notified whenever I release a new video. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!